Tunguska, and then a second explosion which happened over a similar area in the 1980s or 90s, was it mid-90s, something about 80 miles up?
Well, actually the last explosion took place on 15th of February 2013 over Russia, over Chelyabinsk.
And that was shot down. That was the one that people could see with their cameras this time.
Yeah. And this shot was recorded. I think you have seen the video from that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way that a ballistic missile on Earth could have been fired at that thing with the targeting and the weapons guidance system and the relative acceleration of a nuclear missile. In other words, it couldn't have been done by anybody here. Not right.
Right. And we have got a video where you can see how this object, we call it Terminator. If you have read materials which I have published in Nexus, you remember I gave a special name to these missiles. I call them Terminators.
Okay,
so,
from the point of view of the audience, can you reference roughly when that was in Nexus? Because there's a lot of features in Nexus.
Well, it was on 2004. We have published 2 big articles in Nexus magazine. The first article was called The Valley of the Death, and this is material which enlightens all possible information from ancient texts, from local witnesses, from the books, from whatever. Well, actually information about what people encountered in taiga, in the forest. So strange metallic objects like domes, like huge balls, sometimes 50 or 60 meters in diameter, just laying on the ground, on top of the ground. A lot of things like this. Mm-hmm. And then, actually, all that materials was kind of a description and information about existence, because all this material is giving or making a big question mark. What is this, actually? And the material number 2, which was called What Stands Behind Tunguska Explosion, that was material which was carefully step by step describing what actually happened there, and I also was talking about the evolution of the process. So how and what events took place 2 or 3 months before, what actually started to happen 10-15 minutes before explosion, and then appearance of huge light beams coming from under the ground up into the sky, and then just along these beams huge fireballs were moving up with a strange terrible sounds, and that was the missiles, Terminators, which were loaded up by enormous amount of electromagnetic field or electromagnetic energy, so much that even when they were hovering over the ground, not so high, maybe 20-30 meters over the ground, a lot of like thunders were hitting the ground. So that was on one hand absolutely amazing, wonderful and terrifying picture. On the other hand, it was clear that something technical, very special and technical, is taking place. Then after 10-15 seconds of hovering over one area or one place, this Terminator starts to fly. First slowly, sometimes maybe a little bit faster, and all of them were flying till a certain moment, just 10 seconds, 15 seconds before the meteorite appeared, these terminators stood up, all of them stood up, and that was the moment of, we call it last moment to aim, to calculate the trajectory, to calculate the speed, and then all of them just rush to meet this meteorite one by one and started to hit it. Huge, terrible explosions. And the meteorite have been destroyed, actually burned into powder. And this powder then was melted and it was transformed into drops, like a melted substance, which were then flying in a different direction like a bullets, hitting trees, bushes. So this melted substance was covering the territory approximately 2,500 kilometers, square kilometers. Can you imagine this powder and melted substance? And that there were 3 explosions. Why? Why so strange action? Because that, for example, Tunguska meteorite was carrying a dangerous bacteria. So no one even smallest piece of meteoritic substance had to fall on the ground. That's why that meteorite was destroyed completely, not only into pieces, then into powder, and then this powder was melted. And when, after the second explosion, one small piece of meteorite fall on the earth, okay, just hops in the earth, then people reported, the witnesses reported, like big terminator just moved and then shut down and hit the ground with terrible explosion. Can you imagine? The hole at the place of explosion was 200 meters in diameter and almost 10 meters deep, or even maybe 20 meters deep. I do not remember now clearly. It is huge explosion, and this explosion was the reason why the wave, this seismic wave, moved over the earth 3 times. Can you imagine how powerful that explosion was? And then the last explosion over Chelyabinsk on 2013, that was even much stronger than over Tunguska. And that was the amazing case, because I have gathered a lot of interesting information about this explosion, and I'm going to write a book about it, and we still are going to make some additional video and TV programs about it, just presenting absolutely unusual events in connection with this explosion. So, it is clear now that on the planet Earth exists an installation which is playing a very important, decisive role in the destiny of our civilization, defending us against dangerous bacteria or meteorites carrying dangerous bacteria. And at the same time, this installation also is defending us against the asteroids which could destroy the installation itself when falling on the ground. So there are just 3 cases why installation is active when one or another meteorite or asteroid is getting to appear over the planet Earth. All other cases, installation do not react. And
is there a common trajectory for those incoming meteors? Are they coming from the same place?
Well, on one hand, it is clear when you start to investigate the trajectory of that meteorites and asteroids, and you can see that mostly like like almost 90% of them, they are flying from southeast to northwest. It's like from around, they appear over Australia and they fly in direction of Japan and to Russia. So you can imagine the trajectory. But there are few other cases when the meteorites are flying a different way, but mostly those meteorites which were destroyed by installation, they flying this particular trajectory. And this is the reason why this installation is mostly very active over Japan. And I have got maybe 100 or even, I think, even more videos done by Japanese Academy of Science, Geological Academy of Science, which is actually watching Sakurajima volcano, because Sakurajima is active. They are investigating the activity of Sakurajima volcano, and a few web cameras are watching volcano constantly, 24 hours per day, 365 days per year. So, and if you get access to this video camera, you can see by yourself absolutely unusual technical activity over Sakurajima.
Yeah.
So it is clear. This is the reason why I told yesterday we are very much concerned about the future of the Earth, because we are sure we are in store. It means that event in connection with the asteroid impact is waiting for us approximately in 5-6 generation. And 5-6 generation, this is the time when we should try to find a possibility to get into scientific interaction with this installation. We should somehow find contact with those who is operating. We know that this system is operating automatically.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also registered that there are somebody who is visiting this area pretty often. I'm talking about UFOs. Let's call them UFOs, but I don't like this word, because actually this is the spaceships, okay? And this is kind of a technical spacecraft which are bringing to Earth something which they then download into the system. We have noticed that there is, I would say, when you look on this area from helicopter, for example, this is like a lake.
Which area precisely?
Round lake. But what is interesting that UFO appears over this lake periodically.
Yeah.
They are flying one and the same direction, and it's interesting that there is a huge mark on the land. This is just a very, very long line coming right over the mountains, over the top of the ridge of the mountains, and then at the end of this line there is a cross, and in the middle of the cross there is a lake. So they're flying along this long line, then they stop over this lake and then drop something into the water and then fly away. And the idea was that probably they are loading down something like these Terminators,
Yeah.
but still empty missiles, just missiles. And then these missiles are bumped in by electromagnetic energy, and then later they are used to shut down meteorites and asteroids. So this is the reason why we are interested to get more information about it, and we are trying to find a possibility to get into contact with them. Because this installation could be very, very helpful for us in the future to use it to shut down the future asteroids, which we are waiting in 5-6 generations. That is our concern.
Yeah. Right. The installation. I already asked you yesterday that when is it going to be running out? When will it sort of stop? Because it has a deadline. So this installation, when is the deadline for it?
Well, on one hand, the deadline, well, actually is in, let's say, in 5 generations. It's already deadline, okay? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we have another aspect which we can take into account as a deadline. This is the process, so-called energetical processes, which are getting step by step changed. I'm talking about so-called psychic processes, which are very important in the system of energetical support of this installation. Well, actually, this installation is using the energy of the Earth, okay? So-called seismic energy, electromagnetic energy, the energy, you know, when the very thick pieces of the Earth crust are moving, okay, and they are getting a little bit deformed. All this causes the creation of the enormous amount of energy, and this installation is gathering this energy, and for proper gathering and for proper accumulating of this energy in a certain area, those cyclic processes should be taken into account. And approximately in 30, 40, maximum 50 years, this cyclic processes and this period will be changed. And then this installation became or will become more silent than ever. Mm-hmm. It means for us, if this is a disaster.
Yeah.
So we have, from this point of view, we have 30, maximum 50 years to get into contact with those who is controlling this installation, trying to get a possibility for negotiations.
Have you managed to do that so far?
How to use this installation for us, what we can do, because otherwise we need to invent, you know, nuclear rockets or whatever. But this nuclear rockets is pretty weak weapon, and it's better than nothing, but it's not so effective.
It must be clear you've got to have an energetic weapon, because you're just going to create more problems if you blow a thing like that up. If you do a Bruce Willis, so to speak, you're going to have a lot lot more headaches rather than just one big one.
Yeah, and
I mean, do you have any measurements of from the particles that were created? Do you have any idea of the kind of energies that were used in those weapons to disintegrate that material? I mean, what sort of scale of energy are we talking about?
That, just very shortly, we can say that first of all, this is electromagnetic energy, and this is a scalar, so-called scalar field, scalar energy. Yeah. Just shortly, without details. So it's understandable. We are developed enough. We are educated enough to understand how it works.
It
What
sounds
we
like.
need is just to get access to the installation.
I mean, the main kind of technology you must be talking about. There's been discussion on the internet about Russian scalar weapons going back to the 1960s, and rumors that the Iranians and other countries have got this access to this kind of thing, and that was used. That kind of weapon was used for 9/11.
No,
Is it? Are we
no,
talking
no,
about
no,
that kind of weapon?
no. This is not true. On one hand, sure, uh, I knew that people who was engaged in the investigation of that mechanisms and energies, some of them already passed away, but it is strange. Maybe it sounds strange that that weapon and that technologies stayed unused, mostly unused. But on the other hand, now, already after 30 years of investigation, I can answer and explain that this is reasonable because that type of weapon was so destructive and it was so advanced that curators, those whom we call watchers from the sky, just let's call them like this, they did their best to suppress this technology. They did their best to make anything possible so that this technology wouldn't come into life in full scale.
We're talking about stuff which can put stuff into particles. I mean, that's what happened at 9/11. Everything was just disintegrated into particles.
Well, in any way, as just try to understand, we cannot speak about anything just like this openly.
Yeah.
But important is that the technology is understandable, realized, and even some, how to say,
Interesting.
in general, this technology stayed undeveloped, stayed mostly undeveloped, and it didn't reach, as I said, full scale. But maybe in the future, time is coming to get back this technology into life. And this is time when we probably will not be interrupted or suppressed developing this technology on a higher level. And this technology can be used in the nearest future to defend ourselves against meteoroids and asteroids. So we will see. We just need to start moving in this direction. And I'm, on one hand, happy that right after Chelyabinsk explosion 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, in February, it's going to be 3 years ago, Putin and our government announced that they are going to start and finance a special military organization, and also on the basis of Russian Academy of Science, which will be involved in preparation and creation of a special technology to interrupt asteroids and to defend planet Earth against this danger. So this is just the beginning, but it's good. It's very, very challenging.
But the kind of energies needed to do that must involve some kind of 0-point energy. Have you have any feelings about the various 0-point energy technologies which many people across the world are trying to break through? I mean, a lot of people invent this stuff, but when they want to actually produce it,
this is actually time when I think, and I really hope, that we put all this knowledge together. People from all over the world will start to bring their ideas and technologies together and creating this.
I mean, with global warming and if a lot of people, I mean, this is with the British hacker Gary McKinnon. One of the great things he was trying to expose was the use of this technology for everyday use, so we
This,
don't pollute the world with all these toxins and diesel fumes and carbon dioxide and things. If we had 0 point energy or whatever kind of energy these things use, we wouldn't have any of this pollution.
actually, this is what we meant as well in part one: disclosure, not to sort of testify whether they exist or not, but essentially free energy usage that is suppressed. And definitely, they hierarchy has that technology, but it's not good for their business. So when is that going to be disclosed? That's what I mean by disclosure.
We should be very careful about it, I tell you, very careful. Because, well, you are living in England, in Great Britain, and you have access to that people, you can meet, you can talk. The same is going on here in Russia. We are encountering information from different sources, then we are trying to get in touch with the people and to check the reality of one or another technologies. And up till today, I can say that 95% of those ideas and technologies still are no more than ideas. Some of that people are, they are making kind of fakes or hoaxes. Let's say up till today, just up till today, just very little bit, just very few people are really interesting for to get part in the developing of this technology. So I think the same situation is in Great Britain and America and other countries. So what we actually have to do, we should work as the filters. We should filter out this people, this energy, this information, and then bring it together. This is the practical, actually, practical
I think
way.
the problem is when people invent it, that's one thing, but when people want to actually produce it in vast numbers, they're actively stopped. I mean, a lot of serious pressure happens.
Yeah. Well.
In any way, in Russia, we have no any pressure. Let's say in Russia, no any pressure. What you need is just to make something physical. Show us if it works. Russian government immediately starts to finance. Immediately. In Russia, situation is quite different.
You mentioned about communicating with these extraterrestrials or beings. There was a conference, I believe, in a CSETI conference in Bulgaria a couple of years ago, and an Irish astronomer called Eamon Ansborough spoke at that, and he spoke of developing some kind of new kind of communication system to develop. He's actually published this in papers now. It's not secret. He will be speaking at the Basis conference in August. Have you any ideas about how we would communicate with ET, so to speak? Because an ordinary radio wave is pointless.
Well, listen. The reality is sitting, I would say, or living in a quite a different place, because this is not the question to get into contact with ETs. The question is, do you really want it?
Well, yes, exactly, yeah.
Yes, and then what actually one or another scientist starting to talk about it want to project into humanity. They want to bring forward their own technology, and just to say that my technology is capable to get into contact with ETs, or you just use the same principles and the same instruments which have been used thousands of years ago by Egyptians, by Sumerian, and they have been, chatting with ETs daily and without any danger for human health, because that system were absolutely energetically clean and very ecological. So this is the answer. So if you want to get into open contact with ETs, you should use not electromagnetical, antennas, turned into the space, working in a certain range of electromagnetical energy. No, just build up pyramids, and you for sure get into contact, because those ETs with whom we can get into contact, and believe me, we would be more than happy being in contact with them. they are living very close to us,
Yeah.
very close, just behind the curtain, energetical veil. And on the other hand, they are living physically just round behind the sun. The big planet, bigger than the Earth. Can you imagine Earth plus the mass of the moon, the planet, occupied by our predecessors?
Are you referring to what's called Vulcan? Astrologically, people refer to a planet on the opposite side of the sun, similar to Earth, but they call it Vulcan from an astrological point of view.
Well, they're talking about astrological, but
Yeah.
on one hand, talking about astrology, and I wrote a few lines about it in my book, the Pyramid book, that, well, astrology is a very interesting science, which has a wonderful history and could be very, very useful for humanity, not only for the whole humanity as it is, but also for individuals. But, my friend, the ancient texts say that 13,669 years ago, the planet Earth made a jump into time, and the whole time have been changed, the time cycle have been changed.
Now,
And
how does
if-
that work? In what way are you talking about? Is the time density, time space of the solar system changed, or what?
Well, so okay, let's take into account what actually astrologers are doing. They're taking into account planets, their rhythm of rotations around the sun, and this, let's say, actually physical aspects of astrophysics. And then they also take into account the time and the place of appearance, where the sun over the horizon, the star system over the horizon, and are calculating their timetables, whatever they do. And they say, okay, we are already living in Aquarius, but according to the ancient texts, and this is the reason why astronomers, they don't like astrologists, because if you go early in the morning and look on the horizon physically, and you see in which star system, in which epoch we are living now, you will see that the difference between reality and what astrologers are doing is almost 600 years. It's a difference. So
Explain that again. I mean, are we saying that the astrologers are 600 years ahead or behind?
they are they are ahead. 600 years ahead. Because the planet Earth made a jump in time almost 14,000 years ago, and these changes have been taken into account by ancient priests, and the whole cyclic system, the canon which they used for creating the plans, for building the pyramids and complexes, everything have been recalculated, and the information have been left.
I mean,
But-
this is interesting because there are some commentators are suggesting that we've basically we've got 1,000 years missing. We're really
600.
only actually in 1066.
No. Try to understand that we are living in a very
Or 1066.
strange situation. We are living in a very strange situation. Very strange.
I mean, this is what we
Because
discussed
on one
before
hand-
we actually started about time density or whatever it is, how time now is different than it was. I mean, is this
Okay,
connected
just-
with that?
Try again. I'd like to a little bit slow down our mental fly. We are flying too fast. So let's make few marks, most important marks. Where we are living now, okay? We are living now. So there is a practical, actual, physical aspect, which we can see and calculate early in the morning looking on the horizon. This is factual information. Factual. First. Then, for example, there is astrological mental construction. They are living in their own world. And they're saying, okay, we are living 608 years ahead. Actually, this is another, second, number 2. And then, what also astrologists are taking into account different information from ancient sources, because they are also using the information described in ancient texts in connection with the stars and with the calendars that have been used. But I tell you that working over calendars, and especially working over the historical time, I can tell you for sure that our present historical way of thinking is wrong. We are living actually in a wrong time, because, for example, today is the February 2006, okay, or 2016, right? And then another example. We are calculating our time from the beginning of our era, right? Our era started 2016 years ago from the birth of Jesus Christ, right? Agreed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, for all Christians all over the world, Jesus Christ was brought into life on 25th of December, 0, means 2016 years ago. But if we take in our hands ancient books like Russian Paliya and some other books, where the date of the birth of the Jesus Christ is described carefully, and the date is given. Date is given by 2 ways, by 2 calendars, okay? According to that calendars, Jesus Christ have been born on 25th of December 1152.
Yeah, that's what I mean by the missing 1,000 years.
Sometimes even 1,800. So it
Now
means
this is explained. There's more to explain based on the way that the calendar, the months were shortened as we had it, and all this thing.
I am an investigator, okay, and in my book, the Pyramid Book, I'm giving the information about three asteroid impacts which took place within the last 16,000 years, because any astronomers, they will tell you that huge asteroids, approximately 1 kilometer in diameter, are falling on the ground approximately 1 time in 1 million years. I tell you, wrong. According to the traces, according to the ancient texts, we had 3 within the last 16,000 years. First, then
Ancient texts, hermetic texts, or
well, you can call them hermetic texts. But for example, can you call a hermetic text, for example, the catastrophical calendar of ancient Egyptian temple called Iunta-Nechet, which we know and we call today as Dendera. In Dendera we have five calendars, and all these calendars, round 1 and liner 1, actually this is description of catastrophic events which took place in solar system for last at least 60,000 years. And the information is given very precisely there. You can take a calculator and very easily calculate and see. So, the last asteroid impact, that was connected with an explosion of a volcano in Mediterranean. And probably you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Santorini. So, if you go into the history, you will find out soon that, for example, this Santorini eruption is connected with Exodus somehow.
Right.
It is connected with Egyptian history, and according to the present time, how present Egyptology is calculating the history of Egypt. This Santorini explosion took place approximately 3,500 years ago. So it happened on 1450 years BC, but I would say before New Year. I wouldn't say now before Christ, because Christ is a different date. Let's say before New Year, okay? But it says 3,500 years ago. But there is another way, very clear, very simple way how to calculate time properly. We have South Pole and we have Northern Pole. Around the Northern Pole we have Greenland. And Greenland is covered by a very thick layer of ice, which is almost 4 kilometers in thick, like this. Mm-hmm. So, and anything which is taking place, like a huge eruption, and it gives a lot of, powder, smoke, which gets up 40, 50, 100 kilometers, then flying over the earth, and the traces, the powder is falling down on the ice, okay? And when the ice then covered with the other layer of snow becoming ice, we have let's say like a liner, like a schedule, okay? Yes. We can see exactly and calculate when it happened. This is the easiest way, very understandable. It is taken into account by all present scientists, okay? Mm-hmm. So, according to this data bank, Santorini explosion took place on 1259 after New Era.
Mm-hmm. So that's only a few years ago. That's about 800
years. Yes, that's the case. But science says 3,000 and a half. So, come on, 700 years ago.
But are they using carbon dating for that?
Sure. And then this is the very simple way to show that we are living in a very mixed situation when our calendars and our understanding of the time is absolutely turned upside down. We need to bring in order our brains and our understanding. This is actually what we do here in Russia. We are trying to bring actually information. So, and we found a lot of interesting information improvement. For example, that the whole biblical story took place not in Israel like we think. The whole biblical story took place in France.
France?
In France.
You're not going to give the French this. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, for God's sake, not the French.
But
I mean, that's like saying. I mean,
my friend, if your brains are scientific, let's say if your brains are scientific, it's clear. Scientific brains, in the simplest way, take a Bible, open the page, and start to read. Take a map and watch what actually this Bible is talking about. Jesus Christ was born in Nazareth. Try to find the Nazareth somewhere, over there in the east.
Well, it would explain possibly how we ended up in England, Glastonbury. I mean,
but my friend, I tell you, the Nazareth is existing by the same name in France. Yeah.
right,
The same name.
right.
So, in any way,
There's
it's an absolutely amazing story.
I
Absolutely.
can understand that Chris Thomas, who views Akashic records. I mean, this is psychic people, etc. Well, he said that at beginning of humanity. I don't know. He gave it a figure 10,000 years ago only, not millions and millions as.
No. This is wrong. This is the reason why. Let's be fair. I can tell you very openly. I hate contactees. Because they're talking bullshit all the time.
Of course.
From
you're getting it
here, I'm standing on the land, on my feet. I'm standing and I'm sitting on the science, and science is clear. You can touch, you can calculate, you can test, you can bite, you can put it on.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
So,
well, that's the whole reason why we're talking to you.
Come on.
No, I mean the idea that Jesus would speak French is just too much. I mean, I come from Belfast. I can't speak French.
My friend.
Sorry, I needed to say that. Have you ever heard of a Frenchman speaking with a Belfast
It's like
accent?
it's like for me. I was born here in Russia, okay, and actually I'm Russian. But to be truthful, I'm just 50% Russian, okay, and I'm 50% Muslim. Let's say my father was a Muslim, okay, but my mother was a Christian. So I'm 50-50. But what for me, when we're investigating the ancient texts here in Russia, we came to a pure understanding. Just, let's say, 600 years ago, 700 years ago, in Russia, all people were talking two languages. Two. We had two state languages. The first one was Russian, and the second one, guess?
French?
Arabic. Arabic language.
Arab? Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
Arab.
Russia talked two languages, Arabic and Russian.
No.
That's something, I tell you. That's something. Well.
Is that because of the snow and the ice? You were closer to
No.
Arabia?
It was that is very. This connection is much deeper and much closer. So anyway, I'm just giving you just few sparks,
I mean, it's very interesting because there's a very strong connection between the British Isles or Ireland and Egypt.
I would say that I would like to turn your head and little bit turn your eyes in the quite opposite direction. Look to the Greenland, because
yes, the Hyperboreans.
No. Listen. So, if we just look 14,000 years back, we had a few centers of civilization on the planet Earth. And at that time, the time of Atlantis, we had two centers, actually three, but well-known are two centers of civilization. Which one was Atlantis? But that was a secondary one. But number one was Hyperborean.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's the same word, but I've spoken it differently. Yeah.
And those from Hyperborea, they were civilizing Atlanteans. But they came to Atlantis through the islands, through England, through these territories, So genetically, you are closely connected with Hyperboreans.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why, mentally, by the way of thinking, you are more technical than spiritual. And there is a huge, very important reason for that. Because try to understand that now we are facing reality that in 5-6 generation, we are ahead of huge, terrible asteroid impact. And now I'd like to ask you, do you really believe, being in good brains, in a good health, that those who is sitting around, in the cycle and praying will be able to defend by prayer this asteroid? Do you believe in it?
I don't think so.
Me too. I know only science can do that. And this is the reason why all outside space, consciousness will be supporting those who is concentrated approach. That's the most important idea. And this is the reason why we are more technical than spiritual. There is
now,
a big...
when you say technical, there are people who sort of number crunch. They have a very sort of flat way of doing things. But the best ideas come from an independent way of thinking. No, you've got to come up with different ways to come up with new solutions.
Go closer, please. You're clever enough. Go closer to the... First of all, sure, all over the world, around you, you have a lot of people with very good ideas. Okay? And these ideas, like it was before, they were influencing those who is technically, weaponed, and you start to use mathematics, you start to use knowledge in chemistry and whatever, to describe reality with this instrument, okay? But there is one big problem. We were and we are not helping to each other to develop these possibilities. We are always conquering, we are always suppressing.
Ego.
For money, for business, for whatever, politics, whatever. But not the real stuff. But the real stuff is, sure, let's put all together. Let's invest our time, our energy, whatever, to develop this. And then we will be in a very good position. But we are still not. We are still fighting.
And that's an expression of ego. I mean, it's sort of my place is better than yours. But
So,
we're running out of time on this particular part.
Miles, my friend, do you understand it?
Yeah.
Understand? Then I
Let's
ask
be
you,
together.
why you are sitting there, not here? Or why I'm sitting here, not there, beside you? Why? Between you? Why not?
Well,
We
let's
should,
work
should
together.
go together, quicker, sooner. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, that's a very nice thing to just to pause on, and we'll just take a very quick break, and I'll change tapes and we'll start again. If you want to have a little break, we'll come back in part 3.
Okay, have a nice coffee.
Yes, and I think we need to turn on the heating because you're getting cold.
I am.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
do that as well.
But I see that they're sitting pretty silent,
Yeah.
Just...
I definitely am with you. Know that. That
Okay.
French thing made a lot of sense. I got a couple of ideas there.
Good. Talk to you later. Have a nice coffee.
Okay, we're gonna have a 15-minute break.
Okay. 10 minutes.
10 minutes.